Show.
And co-host Marine Corps Map, coming to you on Monday and Tuesdays in Studio A, noon to 2 Eastern.
And Studio B on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Eastern, with educational, instructional, information, and situational updates, often with wonderful guests on the current landscape in the U.S. and overseas.
This is a go.
We are with you, side to side, and back to back.
Please join us on Monday through Wednesdays,
as well as other hosts and guests here on Revolution Radio.
We're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not gonna take it anymore. That's right, we're not gonna take it anymore. We said we're not.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event as they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo check? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
All right.
Hi.
This is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And it looks like the commercials may be over. And I apologize for the noise in the background, but I've been traveling and I needed a place to actually set up today, and I needed to plug into the electricity. So whenever I can, when we're talking with our guests today, I'm just going to mute so that the background noise isn't affecting it. But I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. We are listener-supported, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can find us at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can go there and look at the funding link and see all the different ways that you can help fund us, because we are listener supported. We have heirloom seeds. We also have new advertiser banners that are affordable. We also, you can just flat out donate if you feel like you want to help all of us people that host, bring as truthful of information to the public as possible. Sorry, I'm a little flustered this morning. It's been kind of a crazy morning. So I'm just going to breathe and start to calm down. So also you can go on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You can look in the Studio A, look at the schedule on the left side. You can click there and you can find schedule A or B. Click on A, and then it'll take you to the the people that are in Studio A, me being one of them. And if you scroll down, you'll see the bee flying towards the flower with the pollen on its legs, and then you can pick up more information about me and the work that I do, and kind of about the show, and any kind of contact information, so that if you need to contact me, you can. Also, I'll just throw out a contact email for you. It's consciousnessofeconomics@gmail.com. And you can also donate to all the work that I do, or help me with my show and different things on PayPal. Or you can contact me by that email to ask questions or book appointments for healthcare, shamanism work, and nutrition. So anyway, we're going to move forward. Finally, this week, I got my guest on, which is like, woohoo! Last week, we didn't get the guest on, and that was kind of, was tough. So today, we're not going to use, some of my guests don't want their whole names used, which is fine. So we're going to, my guest is going to go under the name of Billy D, but I'm going to call him Bill. And he's an old friend of mine, and I'll just give kind of a brief history of how I met Bill. I was, in 2009, I was being attacked by the state for no reason for my practice as a traditional osteopath in Nevada. And it turned out that the state tried to, well, basically it put 250 other people out of business across the state, because they were trying to already put a law on the books, but it hadn't even been through the Admiralty legislator, and so it wasn't even a real law, even under an Admiralty law. So they decided that, Bill?
Yes.
Oh, okay, hold on. All right, I just thought somebody hung up, so we're good. We're good, hold on. Okay, so anyway, what happened is that I ended up from 2009 to 2013 under, major attacks by the state for no reason. Never had a complaint. I was outside of anybody's jurisdiction. And because I had willfully given up all of my contractual licensing, because I didn't really need I didn't do anything to do licensing. I don't do surgery. I don't do anything that would constitute me needing some kind of medical, licensing or any other kind of licensing. So in 2009, when they assaulted me and cease and desist me and tried to, threaten me with a law that hadn't even passed the Nevada legislature yet, I freaked out. And I had been involved in common law or, the constitutional law for a long time. But sometimes until you have a moment in your life that you're threatened, sometimes it just stays on the back burner. And so during that time frame, what happened was I decided to fight the legislature. I decided to lobby. I ended up lobbying about 100 hours a week for 6 months at the Nevada legislature in 2009. And not only did I defeat the Complementary Medicine Act, which would have required a doctor to give you a prescription. A vitamin C would have been a felony without a prescription. Any kind of treatments, including massage, would have been, a felony under this bill. It would have closed 1,500 supplement stores across Nevada, and you wouldn't have been able to buy, anything or alternative stuff, even online, that you would be getting in the mail. So I not only defeated that one single-handedly, it didn't even leave the committee, but also I went on to defeat 46 other bills and 50 bills that I ended up fighting against. And this is kind of where the turning point happened for me, where I went from a conspiracist to a factualist, because everything that I was seeing in the conspiracy arena was actually becoming bills that I saw in 2009. At Real ID, it's when we really had to battle down in Washoe County. We're the last county in Nevada for fluoride introduction into the water. We defeated it. Chipping babies in the hospital, the future of what Real ID was going to be without parent consent. Just a lot of really crazy things that I saw in bills. And so I ended up having to learn to read law, because what they do is they confuse us with language. So for example, you may think like, oh, well, that bill sounds really nice underneath the regular, Webster dictionary definitions. But then you go to the Black Law Dictionary's definitions, and you start to see that that they're using the language completely in a different way, and it turns out to be more sinister, and more so to confuse you about what they're passing. So law is a really complicated thing. It's definitely helped me a lot in my life to be able to stand up and to, identify myself as a free man on the land, a free woman on the land, a free, human. And it's been quite a battle. So basically, I wanted to kind of bring my friend Bill on, because Bill was like a real catalyst in my life. He had been involved in common law for years and years and years. At one point in time, he was a common law court U.S. Marshal. At one time, he was a common law court judge. And so he really helped me to start working on my paperwork, to getting out of fear, and really start to, take my power and really start to read what was being sent to me and how language worked and how it worked for me or against me, and allowing people to use it against me or me using law against them, or to stand my ground, right? To redefine who I am. And I know a lot of people out there, this is really kind of an area where they have a really difficult time. They kind of start to break down, bury their head in the sand around these kinds of issues, because it's so big and intense for them, and it goes right out of anybody's arena. And it's kind of one of those things that, hereditarily we've, given our power up to attorneys and stuff that just negotiate for us. They don't even really negotiate in behalf of us, even if we're suing somebody else, they're just constantly trying to work out a negotiation. So we've just given our power away to everybody else, to be licensed, to do this, to be in contractual agreement everywhere that we're going. And then when it doesn't work, then, we go to an attorney if we can afford one, and one thing I just want to identify, that in common law, it's you. You are your own representation. You are your own attorney. In the traditional constitutional courts, there was no judge that oversaw anything. It was basically, you could have a jury of people, and it was two people who were complaining, who had a complaint. You ran over my $800 cow and killed it, and now I'm out $800. Okay, well, then there's remedies. You either pay for the $800 cow, or you work as labor on that man's farm to pay off the debt for the cow, or you choose not to do any of those, and then you're actually forced out of the community. So you're no longer allowed to participate in that community, because you're not you're not part of the community if you don't want to I think pay for the damages that you've caused. So we still have a lot of common law people. There's a lot of common law groups in almost every state. Judge Anna is kind of more of a well-known common law judge. She's the Superior Court judge of the Common Law Court in Alaska. And they actually really have a court because somebody stepped forward and put the money forward for her to be able to do that. And she's also been a huge advocate with trying to, deal with the population and try to help people understand what's really going on legally. And you can go and look her up, Judge Anna von Reitz, if you want to, if you need some more information. But anyway, so we're going to get to Bill. And so I'm going to ask Bill to give us just a little history on how he got into common law and understanding law, because he had quite a career before. And he also worked for a robotics company as, building robots and stuff like that and machines long before that. And he also had a military career. So, Bill, do you want to just kind of give us a brief history of what had led you, your spiritual or journey to common law or understanding it?
I'll try. Basically, it all started years and years ago when I was in the Navy in the submarine service. We had pulled into San Francisco, and where submariners don't get a whole lot of sunlight, we decided to go to the Safeway store, pick up a gallon of wine, and then head up to Golden Gate Park where we could lay around in the sunshine, drink wine, get a little drunk. And the next thing we knew, we had a bunch of black people coming in there trying to steal wallets, money, or wine, and a big fight broke out. And I wound up carrying one of my friends out because he was too drunk to defend himself. And I laid him down on the grass by the edge of the road, and there was about 12 cop cars out there. And I asked them, I says, hey, we have a problem in there. We have a black gang that is going around stealing and products and busting heads in. And the cop sat there and looked at me, and he said, we don't have to go in there. We don't have to help you. And that's when my eyes woke up, because I thought that was a problem. So I went back in, finished the business, and that time right there has really never left my mind at all. But as time went on, I got married and a few things happened. And about 30 years ago, I moved into Arkansas, where I worked with Emerson Electric as an electrical engineer for about 10 years. And all of the politicians were raising taxes so high that all the big businesses were moving out of the country, which was including the business I worked for, which was Emerson Electric. So me and a couple other engineers decided, wow, we better take care of ourselves. So we went out and we began starting our own business in automation work, building specialty machines for motor companies. General Electric, Emerson Electric, Fasto, et cetera, et cetera. During this time, I was in business after about 10 years, and I had a C corporation, which means I was paying the taxes for the business, but I always made sure that the business never made enough money to even pay taxes. But on my 10th year, I made way too much money. Things got out of hand, and as it was looking, I was going to have to pay the Internal Revenue Service about $120,000. I only paid myself $40,000, and in a C corporation, that means I'm paying the taxes out of my pocket for that corporation's indebtedness. And I pretty well figured out real quick that I wasn't going to be able to make a $120,000 payment nor borrow from a bank, since I was only paying myself $40,000 a year. So I had to start looking elsewhere. And that's when I ran into a woman who's very much a common law person. Her name was Velma. And I ran into her and told her about what my problems were. And the first thing she suggested to me was to get rid of the Corp C and put the business into a pure trust, which is also called a common law trust. And after she explained all of this to me, I went ahead and moved my business into a common law trust, which operates without the United States. Consequently, the Internal Revenue Service couldn't touch my business or my money from that point on. However, as I got deeper in and learning more about common law, I had another man came to work for me. His name was Clyde. He was kind of a rebel. He just loved screwing around with people and the law. It was one of his fun things to do. And so one day he was out driving around, and he got stopped by the cops, and he was issued a ticket for a fictitious license plate. In other words, his license plate had expired. So they wrote him that ticket, and he came over to me, and I looked at it, and I started laughing because I thought, well, how could a license plate be imaginary? So I had just finished up my PhD in metaphysics, and so I could use the title of doctor. And so I wrote a letter to the city and basically told the mayor to go ahead and let me give free counseling to all of his police, because they all have problems. They're out there in the land and they see imaginary cars, imaginary unicorns, imaginary license plates. And I pretty well rubbed it in kind of deep and sent this letter off to them. And they knew they wouldn't be able to win that case in the court, because I'd already pretty well proven that the police department were all kind of loony. So they tore the ticket up. Then the next day they came out, stopped him again, and wrote him a ticket for an expired license plate. And that's when it took off, and that's when we started having a lot of fun. They even jailed him for a while, and after a short period of time, Clyde started educating all the people in the prison while he was locked up and telling most of the people there who were going to be shipped out to another state to not sign their extradition orders, and he started teaching them as to why. And so while he was in there, he taught them that the only person who was really required to sign an extradition order is the governor of the state. And so he started telling those people, says, don't sign a waiver. You can waive the governor of the state by signing your own extradition orders. And so they all caught on to that pretty quick. And so when it came time for the sheriff, after keeping these guys in his prison for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, he would bring in extradition orders and say, sign this so we can get you out here and send you to the state that wants you for this particular action. Well, they all refused to sign it and said, send it to the governor. That's his job. I don't work for free. Slavery. So you started doing that, and next thing you know, the sheriff is losing money. Because if you know how the system works, if these guys are wanted on the crime, that crime has a value set to it, and your time in prison also has a value set to it, and the sheriffs have a habit of using up his time in the jail so that he can collect part of that fine from the out-of-state prisons and have that fine shipped to him so he could pay your rent while you're there in jail. But what that did is it left no money for the state that wanted that particular prisoner, because they wouldn't make any money off it because they'd be sending it all over to maybe this state, and there was nothing there for them to try. So the sheriff is losing money. He couldn't get any money out of them. The states that wanted these prisoners refused to accept them, and he's sitting there holding the bag. He didn't know what to do with them. The warrants for him are basically void. Nobody wants it. He can't let them go. So he's sitting there filling up a prison and losing money. So what he did is he threatened the judge that put Clyde in there. And he basically said, Judge, every time you turn a corner, my cops are issuing you a ticket. Well, the judge knew what he was up against, and he also knew what kind of knowledge we were learning at the time. And so he went ahead and had the charges dropped against him. And then right after that, the sheriff went ahead and kicked them out, and then they went about their business. Now, after that, after I started learning more about the common law, I started reading the Sunday papers a lot. And in these columns that these columnists were writing, I became a columnist. You have to fill out your application, your qualifications, and all this stuff. Send it into the paper. If they accept you, then they'll give you a column. So I did that. But what I was doing is that a lot of these people were coming in and praising about how the system works today and how great the courts are and how they go in and they take the bad man out and everything. And what I would do is I would take some of their comments and I would devoid them under the rule of law, because every time I would put something in the paper, I would have it backed up by law. But when these guys are posting, they were just sitting there flapping their jaws, basically telling a bunch of lies. Now, this caused a lot of problems, because when I was putting in the actual law that protected people, this made a lot of people mad. Then the next thing I knew, my phone was ringing off the hook daily, and we started getting death threats. And these threats were 20 times a day, every single day. When I'd get up in the morning to go to my business, I would have 2 black cars follow me everywhere I went. One black car would stop at one end of the block, the other at the other end of the block, and they would keep an eye on me 24/7, because I was letting the people know that they were being shafted. They didn't like it. Again, it causes them to lose money, and it gives them a lot of problems. This scared my wife so much, she divorced me and moved out because she was scared to death we'd wake up with our throats cut. So she left, and I went about my business trying to handle everything the best that I could. I eventually dropped my column, and I had to start fleeing. So from Arkansas, I went to Missouri and stayed on a 120-acre farm for about 6 months. And what I was doing is basically hiding from them so I could save my life. But they figured out eventually where I was at, but I was lucky. I got a phone call from a friend out here in Nevada and said, "Do you know anything about accounting? We have a problem." And I said, "Sure." She said, "Come on out. I'll give you room and board. Fix my problem." They had an internal revenue problem. Problem is that they'd put $250,000 into their business, and it disappeared off the books. They couldn't figure out where it went or how to recover it. Their CPA couldn't figure out heads or tails out of it. So I came out, and in about a week, I squared away all of their finances, and I set it up such that they were no longer going to have to claim that they'd actually made money so that they could survive another year and keep their business going. Now, from there, everything scattered. And by this time, 10 years or so have gone by, and I kept collecting more and more information on the law, common law, color of law, every kind of law there was, and just basically stored it away. I was too busy to get down and organize the stuff to where it made any sense. And so being busy and everything like that, I kept it stored. But 8 years ago, I retired. And a few problems came up. Bridgette had a problem. Our friend Randy had a problem. And we had to try to get these guys out of their problems and away from the color of law, because they were going to sit and I'm going to talk about Randy for a minute. Is that okay, Bridgette?
Yeah, that's fine. Just don't put his last name. But yeah, go ahead and talk about Randy.
Yeah, because that could even be a fake name. But for instance, Randy, who's a carpenter, hired a man who wasn't. Well, we don't want to talk about the kind of man he hired, but this guy didn't really work very well. Didn't want to work. Wouldn't show up for work. And one day, I guess he came up with this motorcycle and his German helmet on, and he parked in front of Randy's van so he couldn't go anywhere, and basically demanded $600, or he was going to call the police, make a citizen's arrest for battery. Of course, Randy refused giving him the $600, so they went ahead with his threat. And I guess a couple of sheriff's cars pulled up with 4 deputies that got out. And, of course, immediately started harassing Randy, because the other guy said, "I'm the one who made the call. He's the one who violated my rights, and I'm arresting him for battery." Well, to my knowledge, they had never looked at the man to see if he was actually battered. They didn't take any pictures of him. They just immediately turned to Randy and got about 1 foot from his face and yelling at him, screaming at him, and saying, "Can we search your automobile?" And Randy said, "No." And, of course, the first thing the cops wanted to do, they said, "Well, then you're hiding something. We'll search it anyway." Well, I guess that's the way they get around the Fourth Amendment search warrant nowadays. It's just to say, "Well, you're hiding something, so I can search it automatically," which is a bunch of crock. So anyway, it went on, and they couldn't find any drugs or anything in there because Randy's a good guy, but he does have a black belt, and they knew that already. And so what they did is they took the case away from this guy who was demanding $600, and they decided they would take the case over. So they issued Randy a ticket for about $700 for battery. Now, if you're a black belt and you get convicted for battery, that's a felony. And from that point on, you can never own a gun, carry a gun. And you're also going to be subject to harassment, search and seizure all the time in your automobile simply because you have a felony on your record. Well, we couldn't let that happen, Randy. And so Bridgette, being closer to Randy than me, brought him over, and we devised a couple of things to put into the court. The first thing we put in was not a court paper per se, but an outline of basically who they are and what they are, and the mere fact that their court was nothing more than a kangaroo court. When we went into the court, Bridge and I tried to get them to record it into the case, but they refused to do it. What they did anyway behind our back is they made a copy of it and distributed it and gave us our paperwork back. So we went on. We had to appear for pleading, and that was the first case. We went in and basically made the plea, came back out, but we were still stuck again, and we was trying to figure out, now, how are we going to beat this? They're going to proceed no matter what, because the paper we put in isn't recognized by the color of law system. But that's when I remember that I'd done a case for my wife who had a traffic ticket, and we used a motion for discovery to get that traffic ticket wiped out. So I thought, well, this is the way we need to go for Randy. So we went ahead and prepared a motion for discovery, and we wrote it up in such a way that there's no way in the world that they could get jurisdiction over Randy and try him. So from this, what we were learning, by the way, we did beat the case. When we went back in, they just came out with a big smile on their face and handed a case dismissal on it. But what we did learn, or what I learned, period, is that if you're going to be issued a ticket under the color of law in the admiralty, is that you're not going to be able to use common law to defeat that ticket. It's their creation. It was created in their territory. It needs to be fought in their territory. And so therefore you've got to use their instruments, and the motion for discovery is one of their instruments, and it's a powerful instrument. So this is what I learned from them, is that by using this motion for discovery is that they can't move. We freeze them in their tracks, and it worked very well. The thing between common law and the color of law is that you can't very well use common law to defeat anything today, because everything is under the color. Now, you can do like I did. I was a judge under the common law, and one of the first things we did is that we could not take someone who had a traffic ticket issued in the color of law and bring it into a common law court and have it dismissed. You can't do that. They're opposite things, and opposites don't mix in law. So if you get a ticket in the color of law, you got to go into that admiralty court and get it fixed one way or another. You're not going to get it fixed by a common law judge overruling their right to issue you a ticket, because they do not recognize common law, period. They will not, they cannot, and they will not step a foot anywhere into the common law. Vice versa, we can't really step into their realm of things and walk around and demanding common law rights. You already have them rights. You don't have to demand anything. So if you're going to live in the common law statutes, by the common law statutes, you're going to basically live under an upper lowercase name, and you're going to separate yourself from that color of law by issuing yourself a new ID and separating yourself from the color of law language, which is an all capital letter language, also known as legalese. Because in order for them to exist in their own world, they have to have their own language, they have to have their own territory, they have to have their own laws, and they're all corporate. Okay, they can't step out of their corporate being. They can't do that. They have their own world they live in. What they try to do, because everyone has a birth certificate, as they come out, they will grab you, give you a ticket in the admiralty, and force you to come in their courts, whether you're common law or not. They don't care. So the only way you can really use common law today is if you become a judge like I was, is the first thing you do is you start holding trials. But you hold with a full jury, And what you do is you sit there and you try people's names. So if this, just call him Mr. Number One. If Mr. Number One comes in and says, look, I sent away from my birth certificate. They sent me this piece of paper and it has this all capital letter name on it, but I know that under the English language, a name is spelled in upper and lower case. This must identify someone else. So what we said, we would hold a trial under the names. And then we would let the jury retreat and they would make a decision, come out, and they say, yes, you are people because we can hear you, you're talking, you're people, therefore your name should be in upper and lower case. And so we go ahead and under the court heading, we go ahead and make an issue judgment that states with everyone's name signed that this man is a people, he's not an artificial fiction, and his name is absolutely spelled one way and one way only. And so what we did is we took every juror one at a time, each one of them came up with their case, retried each one of them and gave them each a new name. Now they had a common law paper with a common law judge signing it that stated this is who this guy is. So if you issue him a ticket, he could actually walk into a court saying, well, common law overrides admiralty. Therefore, here's my common law name. I don't know who this other thing is on this ticket. Bingo. They've apparently tried to pull someone else into their courtroom that looked like you but isn't you. So they would have to obviously dismiss that case. Now, that's about the only way right now that I can figure out how to use the common law against the system that we live in. So I'm going to drop it right there. So, Bridgette, unless you have any other questions.
Yeah, so, okay, just as a reminder, we're going to have a break about 56 minutes till about the top of the hour. So if anybody at that point in time needs to run to use the restroom or get themselves something to drink, you'll have about 4 minutes, including you, Bill. So just, leave the phone on and go do what you need to do at 56 till. Okay, so one of the things, Bill and I have had lots and lots and lots of discussions about. We do these like Spock mind melding events when we're around each other because there's always new stuff that's coming up, that we're thinking about and making adjustments, to how we're living. So one of the things recently that we've been trying to do, mostly the focus, the way that I look at it, and I have a little bit different languaging because I'm newer to this than Bill is, but I try to look more at the presumption because that's kind of like what admiralty or the color of law is based on. It's not really based on fact. There can be like big court cases where they rely on like an old case or whatever else, but mostly the smaller stuff, we have to make the presumption in admiralty law. We have to presume, which means that we have standing paperwork or we have a record or we've kept data or whatever else in order to, pursue our case. But the only time, letting people know, one of the things that Bill always tells people is, if you want to walk in the common law, you really need to stay out of trouble, which means, you can't pick fights with other people. You can't threaten people. You can't, be getting tickets and speeding. You really have to try to attempt to stay out as much as the system as you can. And add that, try to find ways that you can have a presumption before you're going to need whatever it is that you're going to need. Because they really don't like, one thing about admiralty law is that they really don't like and they will really persecute you for is if you do things right on the fly around the same date as, the trouble that you've gotten yourself into. They really hate that. But if you have paperwork that predates that quite a ways, it kind of gives you just a little bit more leverage. And so one of the things is we're always like trying to figure out how to get ID. And there was a point where Bill and his common law group, they were working with the Vatican, which is the Vatican's really horrible, and they were getting approval to create their own state, their own like sovereign nation. But, because the Vatican, they're a bunch of criminals too, that just really doesn't work out so well. Here you are getting the power from, the power of the people who created the whole admiralty system. and who use it to, damage and steal and harm. So that's a problem. But one of the things that I found recently was the world passport, because it's based on international law. It seems like international law is more protective because you have human rights under international law. And so with the world passport, I was allowed to get a passport as a sovereign being of the world, so that, I can travel and move forward. And I also got it in my birth name, which is, capitalized and lowercase name, that makes me who and what I am from the moment of birth. So I should be getting it in the mail anytime soon, so that then I'll be able to move forward and use it as to help support my common law paperwork as a common law ID, because it is issued from the World Passport, group, and it is based on the premise that all humans have the right to travel, which means they have the right to leave their country at any time that they wish, and they have the right to return back to their country at any time that they wish. So this is based more on human rights. So sometimes I think about, it's country to country that is creating a lot of these, admiralty type laws, and that there are more protective laws internationally. But this is the difficult part. If you say you just need an attorney, under admiralty law for whatever, is happening, because all attorneys are admiralty law, right? Because they're under the bar. And maybe we can have Bill talk about that after I get done with this. So if you need an attorney, it's going to cost you, just locally, $350 an hour for them to negotiate whatever they're going to negotiate. Not help you, not get you off, not prove your innocence, but to negotiate, because somebody's got to get paid, right? So there has to be a negotiation. And then if you go international, say you need to do, I was thinking about taking my case against the state out to federal when they were, attacking me and threw me out of my practice and all this other stuff. I mean, bottom line retainer, just to start the fight federally to get an attorney is $80,000. It's like, what? I mean, try to find people that are going to, fight on your behalf because it's the right thing to do, right? And especially people like me who are in alternative medicine, we are cast out into the weirdos, we're devil worshippers and crazy, cultists, and, we get tossed into a whole mix of things that people, even if you pay them, don't want to really help you because it's so distasteful, I guess, is the thing, because alternative medicine is very much out of the admiralty system in the box. And then I have no idea what it would cost you to get support with international law. I mean, to take it to The Hague, I have zero idea what that would be like. But part of the process, for me, for common law, is to learn how to negotiate my own paperwork, create presumptions, and move forward. There's a good friend, that Bill and I know, who actually helped me with my paperwork, for my corporation soul, which is a whole other, it's also a sovereign entity, and maybe Bill can talk. They don't offer, some states don't offer corporate souls anymore. I have one. One of the things that this person did was, when we were getting a tax ID number, for it, as a nonprofit church entity, corporate soul, we made a presumption in the legal documents, which said that, he said, when did this business start, the corporation soul? And he said, when did you start doing the work that you do? And I said, well, I did it at the moment at birth, because my family, I come from two old bloodlines of holistic people. And he said, okay, well, then we're going to backdate your corporate soul to the initial date that it started, was the day that you were born, 1968. He goes, because then we have a presumption that if anybody comes back to you, you can presume that this is an older corporate soul than it is, right? And that it dates back longer. And that's what we're talking about. Or you can call it an identifier or a presumption. And sometimes you can sneak these into your paperwork, these presumptions and identifiers that make not everything cut and dry when the system is trying to basically steal from you, because that's what they're really trying to do. So anyway, Bill, do you want to talk a little bit about the Bar Association and how they changed the names and then it became a Bar Association, what the Bar Association means? Do you want to give a little bit of a history on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to find something there. Hang on.
Okay.
Yeah, let me start out here with what Congress has to say about the bar. But the 81st Congress, House of Representatives, in Report 3123 on National Lawyers Guild, it's the legal bulwark of the Communist Party. So on September 21, 1950, and I'll go ahead and just read this, committed to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union, in order to be printed by Mr. Wood, the following has been printed. Pursuant to House Resolution on 5-79, Congress Session 1, the Lawyers National Guild is the foremost legal bulwark of the Communist Party. Its front organization and controlled unions. Since its inception, it has never failed to rally to the legal defense of the Communist Party and the individual members thereof, including known as the espionage agents. So right here, basically what it's telling you is that when you're hiring a lawyer, you're hiring a commie. And the communists aren't here to help your free world. And so the other thing you need to know about attorneys is who and what they are. Well, we know they're communists because Congress said so, right? Right. Now, let's go into what the common law or the Holy Bible says about a word called the devil. And so I think the Holy Bible says that at the mouths of two or at the mouths of three, the matter is established. That's in Deuteronomy 19:15. So let's get some witnesses. Witness number one. Now, in the common law, you have to understand when you become a witness to something and you want to stand in common law, you publish it. That's the common law. That's how we got our court started. We published it. That way no one could deny what we were doing. So here I've got three publications. One, Oxford English Dictionary, in 1983 and the 1989 version. Witness number two, the shorter Oxford English Dictionary on Historical Principles. And number three, the Standard Dictionary of English, of the English language, under Funk and Wagnalls. And it says that under the word devil is an attorney. So now I've got two definitions here. I've got one saying that they're not just communists, but they work for Satan. Okay? So the Bar Association, which is a British accredited registry, which tells you that they work for the Queen and not for the people, right? When you sign up there, it's over. They work for the Queen, they work for Satan, and they're not after your wealth. They're not after your well-being, I mean. They're just like you said earlier, Bridgette, they're after your money. They want everything they can get from you. So just knowing those two factors, I don't know why anyone would even hire an attorney. It's just absolutely ridiculous, especially if you could just, because you can fight everything you want to fight in the color of law with one simple thing, and that's a motion for discovery. However, there's another good article here that comes in. And now this article here came from the Attorney General of the United States, who obviously is an attorney, but not all attorneys are bad. A lot of them are barred, and a lot of them are good guys. They fight for the good guys and everything, but they don't really know that they've joined the Communist Party. Then I'd say 80% of all attorneys don't know that they've joined the Communist Party. So a lot of them will help you a lot. But from the Attorney General's office, they wrote, the construction of communism via the law of dupes. Now, this law of dupes is one of the things I used when I was fighting a case in McDonald County, Missouri. And basically what this does, this law actually convicts every sheriff, every judge, all ministers, and just about anybody and everybody flying a gold-braided flag. And if you know how to use this, which I knew how because I put it right in their face, I said, this is what we're going to go for when we go into the court, and that's the law of dupes. And the law of dupes, if you're convicted under it, has a very severe penalty. It happens to be 6 years at hard labor and a $10,000 fine. And so, you know, not everybody, like I said, is bad in the world. I believe this particular law was written by, it was John Kennedy's brother's name that got that. Bobby Kennedy wrote this. Now, as you know, the Kennedys were against the color law. They were against the slavery. They're against the secret societies that are running our planet. And in order to bring us out of that mode, John Kennedy tried to come up with treasury notes, and 2 weeks later, of course, he was assassinated, and Bobby wanted to follow in his tracks. So when he ran for president, they knew they had to assassinate him too, and they did. And this is all done under the color of law in order to preserve their lying butts. So I'm not going to read this whole law to you. It's kind of long, but it really works well when you want to get after someone. It's almost time for our break, isn't it?
Yeah, we have about
couple of minutes. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here. So we have about 4 minutes, and then we're going to go to a break. But I also wanted to talk, you know, like using, if you're going to use, say, a discovery, right, in the court, say you get a ticket or something like that, it has to be done in the Admiralty framework, because they won't accept it if it's not specifically designed in the framework that they accept. So
exactly.
So also where, you know, common law, we work on different kinds of styles and formats of our paperwork. In Admiralty law, you know, it has to be specific, or the color of law, it has to be really specific, or they will deny it. So if you're going to start getting involved in some of this paperwork, then the only time that you would use, discovery is if you got a ticket, or you're, you know, maybe being sued and you think it's unlawful or whatever else. You would use it as a kind of more to defend yourself in the court systems. So, but there's also when we're dealing with a lot of this stuff, and we'll talk about some of this stuff when we come back, but when I was dealing with a lot of the stuff that I was dealing with, I had to file actual, you know, when I got the cease and desist and the legal paperwork, and I was being accused of whatever else, and, you know, I have 30 days to respond, or, you know, my name is Mud. They actually made my name Mud. And know that if they come after you, I mean, like when they came after me 4 times, I had to fight them 4 times between 2009 and 2013, because they sent every possible thing at me that they could, because I would file a notice. I would file them a legal notice basically stating that they were trespassing on my legal rights, that they were not, you know, going through the due process. I mean, none of these agencies ever, you know, sent me a letter, never called me on the phone to say, hey, so, you know, what's going on with you? And this is what we're hearing, because they were immediately on the attack to get rid of me. Out of, you know, alternative medicine, because, you know, the system doesn't like it. So we can talk about some of that, and how you kind of, if you're under those kinds of guns where, you know, it's not a visible ticket and you're not having to go to court, but say you've got boards coming after you illegally because you're not in contract with them, or you've got, you know, different kinds of agencies threatening you. We can kind of talk about, when we come back, you know, maybe how to handle, you know, briefly, a legal notice and how the process of that kind of goes down. And, how over time, Bill and I have, because of all the trouble I've been in, Bill and I have had a lot of time to look at different people's notices and get to where we can refine it more. So hold on, I'm waiting for the commercial to come on. Should be any second now. All right.
Yeah, Bridgette, we need to talk about subrogation too.
Okay. All right. So we got 4 minutes. We'll see you back in 4 minutes. Quick break.
Okay.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey there, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff back. You're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Hey, we are listener supported, so please fund us at the funding page at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You'll see all kinds of different ways to fund us. And all of our amazing hosts and all the information that we bring to you today. Today, my guest is Billy D, and I'm just going to call him Bill, and we're talking about common law and Bill's history dealing with common law and the color of law. And the first hour, we just kind of went over his history and how he came to be, and then also we went over kind of the Bar Association and other kinds of legal documents and stories. So this next part of the hour, okay, I just want to remind people out there, you know, not only like does Revolution Radio produce you know, all of the hosts that on Revolution Radio, we do everything that we do for free for the community. So every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I come on here and bring different guests to help educate the population, and I do that free. And sometimes I can work up to like, you know, 25 hours a week on getting guests and getting my guests booked and trying to get it all squared away in order to get them up on the show and rebooking, and, you know, things happen. And so it can be sometimes a little bit challenging. And so also, you know, some of my work, like Bill, he does everything that he does for free if he steps out and he helps people legally. And so there's a lot of us out there that are barely being supported, you know, barely able to make a living. I've been living in my van off and on since 2006. So wherever, also on top of Revolution Radio, wherever you see people that are doing amazing work out there, Anna Von Reitz as well, Judge Anna, you can, you know, make a small donation, you know, help us to keep doing the work that we're doing. Pretty much I'd say 90% of the work I do is non-paid. So like 80 hours a week I'm working and I don't get any pay for that. So it's always nice when people can actually help support. If you'd like to help support me with even just a small donation, you can go to PayPal and you can use consciousnessofeconomics@gmail.com. If you want to make a bigger donation and you want a tax letter, anything over $200, I'd be more than happy to help you with that. And just contact me at consciousnessofeconomics at gmail.com. That would be great. Okay, Bill, are you with me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we were going to talk about notices.
Notices.
Yeah,
Fine.
Legal notices. Because, well, the ones that, if you don't have a ticket, but you say you have somebody coming at you, maybe you have somebody that you're not, I think, okay, so is this right or not? The only time that you can really file a legal notice is if you're not in contract. So say, for example, you're a massage therapist, but you're not in contract with the state or whatever else, but they come and threaten you. They use their agency to threaten you, and you're not in contract, so you could use a legal notice against them to notify them of what's going on, and if they proceed that you're going to file, you know, you're going to actively as your own person and you're going to go after them. And so you notify them on what it's going to cost them and also what you're going to do as kind of, I don't want to use the word retaliation, but to balance out the situation for yourself. So do you want to talk a little bit about different kinds of legal notices real quick?
Okay. I don't do too many of them.
Right. Or what else do you want to talk about? The
majority of them did is for you.
Right.
But legal notices is when you're trying to battle out of court, where you don't want this to have a court action or anything else, but you're giving them a notice, and just like you said, that, hey, look, these are my rights, this is what I can do, you're violating them, to advance your attack against me will create a liability. So basically that's what you're doing. You're trying to just get them off your back so that you can go about your work and live your life again, right?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Okay. But if they don't stop, you really don't have to worry about anything unless they actually give you a notice to appear in court. So they don't want to go that far, but they will if they think they're protecting their particular business or whatever. However, I don't think it's a good idea to try to put paperwork in and attack them, because if you do it wrong, they can come back and attack you again. What I like to do is just wait until they make a move, and then you counter it with one piece of paper, again, a motion for discovery. And in that motion for discovery, you can really reverse the whole situation on them, and it's so easy to use, and it works every time.
Okay,
now,
so good.
Let's move on. Let's get out of that part, because really that's just a simple thing. Anybody can write that up.
Okay, so just a question though, real quick. So the thing is that you could use the discovery for just about anything. Like, say a board came after you, or the court came after you, or anybody came after you. You could use use a legal discovery? Say, for example, say the massage board. Say you're licensed or not licensed by them, and they come after you without any kind of due process and accuse you of all kinds of things. Could you actually send them a discovery to to their board to say, hey, look, what are your facts?
No.
Who are your witnesses?
No. You're not in court yet. The only place you can use that motion is once they start an action against you. The first thing you're going to do is kill it by putting in a motion for discovery.
Okay, but that would have to be a court action. It couldn't be like a cease and desist and something. You have to wait till after that.
Everything they're doing prior to that is just
hot air.
A bunch of hot air. It's words. Until it actually gets into a court, it doesn't really mean anything. You can sit and argue forever, but what are you going to gain from it?
Right.
The action has to be terminated.
Right.
And so you just kind of, when they start attacking you like that, just say, hey, see you in court, send it back to them and wait for them.
Right.
Otherwise, go about your business.
Okay. All right. So what do you want to talk about now? You have the floor.
Subrogation.
Okay.
Subrogation.
Go.
Every time, because subrogation is part of the process used to get you into a courtroom and to get you to admit that you're a legal fiction. So the first thing they do is they can't get you into their courts unless on that ticket they put an all capital letter name down, which is their language. So again, if you look up in the very first edition of the United States Styles Manual, I think it was page 33, you won't even be able to find it anymore, but we found it like 20 years ago, and it states that an all capital letter name identifies a corporation. Now, this is why they have to put your name in all capital letters, because they're a corporation. And so let me go here and show you what the Supreme Court has said about that. So what we're going to do, one of the first things to do in that motion is we're going to use subrogation. Let me give you the definition. Subrogation, the substitution of one person for another. So what they do is they put your name in all capital letters. You go into that courtroom, and they say, it's John Doe here, which is all capital letters. You stand up and you say, yes, that's me. You just gave the judge permanent identification that you're a corporation by saying, yes, that's me, and you answer to those charges. You cannot do that if you're not that corporation. And under subrogation, what they want to do, since they can't put a corporation in jail, is that they want to put you in jail in place of your corporation that they've just tried. That's subrogation. In other words, I will serve the penalty for charges of this legal fiction. And they've got you. And that once you're a legal fiction, you have no rights. They can do anything they want to in the court or in the prison. Like on the Montana Freeman, when they put them in prison, what they did to them, they tied them down on a rack and they put mild acids into their eyes. And over a period of 5 years, they would totally make them go blind, looser. And also they would tie them down, knock them out, and then they would take out a kidney and sell it on the body parts market to help pay for your rent while you're in jail. And that's what they did to the Freeman. They stole their kidneys, they blinded them. There's nothing left of them. This is what they do once you're a corporation. You don't exist. You're nothing more than luggage being thrown around. So one of the first things you want to do on that motion for discovery is simply state, I do not agree to subrogation, the exchange of one person for another. I disagree. I will not serve time for my whatever it is that all capital letter name is. So that's subrogation. That's how they catch you. You got to know that and you got to let them know that you're not going to stand for the fines or the jail time committed by the all capital letter name, an artificial fiction which can't create a crime. So once we get past subrogation and you know who you are and you let the courts know who you are, you can begin your standard process. And of course, since they can't make you go to prison for them, they don't want you in their courtroom anyway, so they're going to go ahead and cancel it. Subrogation is just part of the motion for discovery. But let me read you something I was going to read to you about the government. It says, insomuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction, and a creature of the mind only, a government can interface only with other artificial persons. That's why they put that capital letter name in there in the subrogation, because they can't deal with you or me in our person as a living soul in our upper and lowercase names. The Supreme Court here has stated that. Let me go on with this. It says the imaginary, which is them, having neither actuality nor substance, which it has no body, is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible being you. So the legal manifestation of this is that no government, as well as any law, agency, aspect, court, etc., can concern itself with anything other than corporate, artificial persons and the contracts between them. And as Bridgette knows, when we were fighting Randy's case, that's one of the things we asked for. Produce the contract. They couldn't do it. Now let me go on with this. Now that particular case there was prior to 1938, so it's not public policy anymore. However, it is what they call stare decisis. And the word stare decisis means that no matter how you try, no matter how you try a case that is similar to this, the outcome is always the same. In other words, a legal fiction cannot hold parity with you and therefore cannot penalize you or try you or put you in prison. Supreme Court has said so. But you have to make that separation. Now let's go on. Here's when that is public policy. Anything after 1938 is public policy. This is also stare decisis, meaning it'll always turn out the same way in law. On Williams versus Michigan State Police, 1989, it says, and the Supreme Court has found and upheld that the state is not a real person and cannot sign a contract, therefore cannot be a claimant as a victim. So when they take you in on a traffic ticket or anything else and they're trying to get money out of you, it's illegal. They can't do that. They're breaking their own law. If you look into the definition of color of law, I'm going to show you another thing under definition that says the same thing. It says it's the appearance of an act being performed based upon a legal right or enforcement of statute when in reality no such right exists. Wow. It says an outstanding example is found in the Civil Rights Act, which penalized law enforcement officers for violating civil rights by making arrests under the color of law, or the peaceful protesters under voter registration. It says it could apply to phony traffic arrests in order to raise revenue from fines and extort payoffs to forget the ticket. How about that? That's so right in the color of law, that they are sitting there and they're plundering you. It's its only purpose is to make money for their corporation. So again, that goes in an all capital letter name versus your real name. And I'm going to make a change here. I'm going to look into this motion for discovery.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just going to go over some of the things that we've said in this thing. Now, for everybody who's listening, you want to know that Bridgette and I have a trust in our all capital letter names And in that trust, it states that our upper and lower case, a living soul, is the trustee for this all capital letter name. And so this is one of the first things everyone needs to do, is to separate yourself from that all capital letter name. So based on this, when they write a ticket in all capital letter name, first thing we do is we go in and we kill it. And so let me read some of this. What do I want to find? It says here, defendant statement as well as any other written record. Well, anyways, it says supply all your information that you have on a piece of medium. Specify, you are specifically requested to provide all the information above in clear, legible, photostatic copies, yada, yada, yada. Now it says here, it says here we go. Provide the trustee. Now, you got to realize here, I'm going to read the front part again because I got all mixed up. I hope I'm not confusing anybody. But it says here, defendant, the all capital letter name, a factualized trust via, which means through the trustee, does hereby make motion for discovery and request the court direct the proper attorney in respect to the sheriff's department, deputies, police, to disclose to the trustee the following, okay? Because now they have to disclose everything to the trustee, which is the upper and lowercase name. Let's see, I'm going to move on down here. It says, provide the trustee on behalf of the defendant with a certified copy of any contract between the parties, and if none, then state no contract exists. Now, on that definition I stated earlier, it says they can only defend themselves against other legal fictions, okay? So where's the contract? They weren't able to produce that contract, so they had to kill a case. That's true for anybody. In fact, that's about all the farther you have to go into a motion of discovery. If they can't produce a contract at this point, they lose the case. I've added more to this, and I'm still expanding on it. And the other thing I'm doing here is under the motion is the certification of rights. And under the certification of rights, it goes in to say that the court is to protect against any encroachment of constitutionality secured liberties. Okay, that's the court's duty. It states that under Boyd versus the United States Supreme Court. So therefore, the court has to protect me when I go in. And that's right on here in my motion. So it says, certify the right of the defendant and the trustee, defendant being the all capital letter name, whom hereby refuse the subrogation, the substitution of one person for another. The trustee will not stand in nor serve any time or penalties for the defendant. Certification of rights of trustee, and produce a certified copy of the judge, prosecutor's bonds and oath to protect against any damage resulting by their actions or orders that may harm, imprison, or dishonor the trustee under the color of law or under the color of authority or by subrogation. C, certify your jurisdiction. Is your jurisdiction sea or land? Certify who put you, what law do you operate under, in international law and statutes or common law versus the Bible? 3, were you elected by offshore merchants or U.S. citizens or by we the people? Authorizations to challenge this jurisdiction is at Title 28 U.S.C. 1602-1611, which is under the Foreign Sovereignties Immunities Act. That gives you the authority to challenge their jurisdiction, right on the motion. And then certify the right of the trustee to be called trustee by producing a letter from both the prosecutor and the judge stating that they will only use the term trustee to address the trustee. In other words, I don't want them to say Bill Wellesley. I don't want them to say John Joe. I don't want them to say Mary Board. I don't want them to say anything. I don't want them to put the word Mr. in front of everything. That's why it's just called trustee. Mr. is a title for an offshore merchant. And so if they call you Mr., you better not answer, because you do answer, then you've identified yourself as an offshore merchant, and then you become subject to this jurisdiction. You are not.
And, yeah.
Therefore, under this, I particularly say the only thing I'll answer to is the word trustee.
Yeah, and also too, if you answer to Miss or Mrs. or Mr., you also can get yourself into trouble as a foreign agent as well.
Exactly, because those are all foreign agent titles. They have nothing to do with the common law.
Okay,
nothing to do with you.
Right. So one of the things, like, as Bill and I have been going down this rabbit hole of how to deal with, all these different kinds of laws that are going on simultaneously, and how we don't look at it as protecting ourselves. We look at it as, how do we establish ourselves, and then how do we move forward, so that other people can understand, where we're coming from, right? We can identify ourselves, and so it makes it faster and more rapid when, say, for example, good and evil come together, and the moment you can, like, identify to the evil or whatever, that, this is me and I'm the light, the faster evil can go away and go find something else to do. So this is more about, you being able to identify who you choose to be. Sometimes this work also takes time for you to, sometimes you have to decide. Sometimes you have to move from the mundane world, and how you've been participating in it for as long as you have, and move to a place, and sometimes it's out of complete necessity, because they're going to steal from you, they're going to arrest you, and these remedies don't get you back your money, they don't get you back your clients, they don't get you back your private practice, they don't get you, sometimes they don't get you back anything, right? Sometimes there is no, like, full retribution, but sometimes the more that you keep identifying yourself to the system in a legal way, the less apt that they're going to be deciding to target you as a financial bank or a financial entity in which they can pull bonds, that they can pull any kind of financial remedies that they want on you, including life insurance policies that you'll never see, that all these people that you've had accounts with under your Social Security number will pull on you. Even AT&T pulls a bond on you if you sign up for credit or, say, a 2-year agreement. I found recently that they will pull a bond on you and a life insurance policy, so that they're guaranteed. So the moment that you die, this is why when you get your death certificate, it looks like a stock certificate, because that's exactly what you are to them in the color of law, is a financial instrument. And then they use all kinds of financial instruments to get you to. So when Bill says, like, they want to pull you into court to get money out of you, your measly $500 fine out of your pocket is not what they're looking for. They're looking to pull a bond on you for $3 million. They're looking to pull a life insurance policy on you, so that way if they kill you or murder you while you're in their jail, that they're guaranteed to get their money, right? And these things are never shown to the public. Like, people don't know this. I had some friends in the recent past who we were looking into, we had to get them, I forget what the number is, the FISCA number. Anyway, we're going through this group because the bank was trying to steal their house. And so this group came forward to get their house and the title of their house in their name. So one of the things that we found that they were using against the courts and the bank was that the FBI agent started doing searches in the background to find out what the banks had attached to these people. And what they found was that there was a $300 million bond taken out in each of the husband and wife's name. And then there was a $300 million life insurance policy on the husband and wife, both. I mean, we're looking at, like, what is that, $1 billion? I mean, it seems like so, like crazy. But once they found this, then they found the numbers, and it was on the hedge fund. So this was once the FBI agent came forth with all this information, we could use this information against the bank to show the fraud and the assets that they were creating just off a contract signature off a mortgage. So when we're talking about them wanting to get money out of you, it isn't like the average money that you see day to day. But it can take your house. It can, because you got in contract with them, to have a mortgage. And so under contract, they're going to make any kind of money they can off you because you're a financial instrument, and then you're mortgaging in contract for with financial instruments, and then they just keep building on it. So this is like about, all of your money and all of your value of who you are as a person. And basically, when you get to a point where you're valueless, you're over 50, you're in the hospital, you need medical care, it's just super easy for doctors to murder you and get rid of you. Because now they don't really need you anymore. You're run down, your equipment is broken, which is your body, and so they need you to reincarnate so that they can continue to feed off you again. So, a couple of the things that Bill and I have talked about in the past as we're navigating this hole, once you can get yourself a trust, you become in some way, shape, or form, you can make yourself a trust, and so you put your capitalized name as the trust. And then you create yourself, the power of attorney, the trustee, over that in the capitalized and lowercase name. Then one of the things that you want to do is, if you are forced to sign some kind of document, if you're forced to sign a ticket, you're forced to sign on a mortgage, you're forced to sign whatever you need that you're forced to sign on, you can always add your upper and lowercase name and your signature, and then write trustee next to it, which indicates as an indicator and presumption that you are the trustee of something, of the uppercase corporation name. So that gives you the power, the legal power to actually, ask questions, the power of attorney to go in there as the trustee, and to ask questions and figure out what's going on. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an identifier that you're different, right? That you're signing as a different person. Also, one thing that we learned from Randy's case was that at the end of his case, right, they give him a letter saying that it's dismissed. But then what happened is that they kept giving him a document that the case was dismissed under his capitalized name. So he got really ticked off about this. So he had to go down to the court twice in order for them to actually write the document that the case was dismissed against his upper and lower case name. So that way, if they just dismiss it in his capitalized corporation name, they still own that. So they can still pull a bond, they can still get assets, they can still get money against him, even though it says dismissed. By him getting the actual official letter and that it's actually, registered with the court that it was dismissed as the upper and lower case name, then they can't actually utilize him as a financial instrument because he's dismissed as the common law, as the sovereign person, not as the corporation. Okay, Bill, do you have anything to add about that? Any of that?
Yeah. Driver's license, a lot of these people who want to go in the common law, they think they know everything, and so one of the first things they want to do is go dump their driver's license. And then when they get stopped in the road, they have really no defense. It doesn't matter. Let me put it this way. If you're going to do the common law thing, keep your driver's license, because you have to remember that the name at the top is in all capital letters. And it also takes 2 signatures to make a contract. So in that driver's license, your signature is the only one on there, which means you've accepted the contract, but the state did not. You have no valid contract, number one. Number two, you're basically signing as a trustee for this trust to go out and do commerce upon the road. So if you're going to go in the common law, don't feel bad. Don't give up your driver's license. Keep it. All that is just another piece of paper that says that they can only do business with a legal fiction, and that you're merely, and when you go in with your motion, just simply state that as the trustee, I signed this trust, that I signed this driver's license on behalf of the trust while it's doing commerce under an international law or color of law or in the admiralty. Okay, so one nice thing about separating yourself from that all capital letter name is that you're protected all the time. If you want to do business in the admiralty, you're not really doing it yourself under your upper and lowercase name. You're doing it in the name of your trust. And so if there's a mistake made in the name of your trust or anything else, they can only go after your trust. They still can't come after you. And it still voids out everything they're trying to do, if I made myself clear on that.
Yes. And, one of the things that we did, Bill's so smart. But like I said, Bill and I have spent hours debating different things, law and what we see other people doing. And a lot of this other paperwork just seems way too hard and just way too extreme, right? And we've kind of taken like a way different approach. We've taken paperwork that we've seen, that we've liked, we've adapted it. And then we've also, Bill's done a really good job with creating other documents to actually support it, but simple, easy documents so that we have numerous hands that we can play. Because we're like, okay, how far do you want to go down our rabbit hole? Here's one document. Here's two documents, right? So we have like 5 or 6 hands we can play if we need to. But you can put, like if you create your own trust for your capitalized name, you can actually put as the identifiers of that capitalized name, you can put your driver's license, what state, and the driver's license number. You could put your birth certificate and the birth certificate number and state. You could put your passport on there and the passport number and country. You can put any kind of legal document that identifies you, your social security card and number, and what state it's in. All these things that identify your trust, your capitalized name, can be added to your trust document that your lower and uppercase person will be the trustee on. So you can actually add these into your document, so that way if you do have any trouble or run-ins, you have the presumption of law again on your side, because you have the identifiers of, yes, this identifies my corporation, this identifies my corporation, this identifies my corporation, this identifies my corporation as Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, all in caps. But my Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff in upper and lower case is the trustee over all of it. So it gives a presumption that even if you get pulled over or whatever else, that your driver's license is still kind of managed by the trust, and that you are the trustee that's managing that trust. So sometimes it's good, like if you go down the road and you want to create a trust like this, that you might want to put all these identifiers in there, so that way it's clearly in there if you have to use the trust document, that your driver's license is said that it's underneath this corporation called Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. However, we understand that we have it here in our document, and but however, the trustee and the power of attorney of that corporation is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, upper and lower case. So you can add in, instead of freaking out about getting completely out of the system and then not functioning in the system. I think one thing I'm learning from Bill and what we're learning together is that there may be a middle road. There could be a middle road here, and setting yourself up to where there's the potential or possibility of the middle road. Do you have anything to add about the identifiers and presumption and all of what I said, Bill?
Oh, no, that's pretty good. There's another thing you can always do too, if you get to the point where you have to defend yourself, is that when you write the motion for discovery, the other thing you can add in there behind it is the authorities in the law. One of the authorities I stated to you already, which is that the government's an artificial fiction and it can only do business with another one, and things like this. But you can also put an invoice in there, because right now they are forcing you against your will to spend time to defend yourself and probably spend time in court. So not being a slave and going by the honorable thing to do under the 13th Amendment is that I haven't legally been turned into a slave, so I must be a free man. Therefore, I have a right to contract out my labor hours that you're forcing me into. Okay, that's a forced labor. Send them an invoice, $500 an hour for all the time you're setting it up. Put it behind your motion, put it in there, and that will scare the hell out of them. You understand?
Yeah, and the invoice can. I love whenever I look at some of the.
I think I lost you.
What was the original currency of the United States? Was silver. So you always want to put you don't want to put it in U.S. dollar, but you also want to make your invoice so that it's in troy silver ounces, right? So it's also means that the money is out of the system, that it's actually solid assets. So in the event that the court would proceed, or these people would proceed, and they would have to pay your charges, they're going to barf when they realize that it's troy silver ounces. Where in the heck are they going to get that? That's another thing that they'll probably barf over. But some of the invoices I've seen that really crack me up are 15,000 troy silver ounces for one phone call. If I have to call you and I have to further discuss this, then I'm going to bill you 15,000 troy silver ounces. If you are in coercion, like you decide, you're going to be in coercion with all these other people, and then these other agencies come after me, then I can sue you for each act of coercion. I can send you a bill, for 25,000 troy silver ounces for each incident. So I always laugh when I read a lot of different people's invoices, because there are some pretty. It kind of cracks me up, because I can just see like a judge or attorney or somebody else reading your invoice, how you can write like exactly how things are going to be paid, what the charges are going to be for per item on your invoice, and then you invoice them a separate invoice that says per, number 10 on the invoice list, that I have to, basically, contact you again with another legal notice or a legal instrument. Now you're getting charged, per item 10, which is 15,000 troy silver ounces, right? And it kind of, once I start kind of reading the invoice and the different payment schedules, right, and what the charges are going to be, sometimes it makes me lighthearted and it makes me giggle, because it's hysterical. I mean, I can't even imagine somebody in the common or in the color of law reading that and just like literally not turning red and almost barfing on themselves, because it's pretty funny stuff. I think it's funny, because I would barf on myself if I got a letter like that. I'd be like, troy silver ounces, where in the heck am I going to get that? Number one. And number two, it's like, well, I'll just leave those people alone, and that's what the choice is. Leave me alone, or we're going to continue to have this dance down the road and maybe get away. In the beginning, I think sometimes when you're standing up for yourself, you have a lot of anger, and you have a lot of, you want this retribution and stuff like that. And it never really happens that way. You're never going to get back what you lost, or what they've accused you of, or what they've taken away from you. But then you get to a point where you're doing the paperwork, like Bill was talking about his friend Clyde back in the day. And Clyde's, favorite thing was to file all kinds of different notices just to see what would happen, and send them in just to see the reaction of the people, like be a fly on the wall to see what happens when somebody reads your your remedies or your instruments and see their response. And so you get to a point not where, you're like funny and, dancing all over, but you get to where you're a little bit more lighthearted because you know that it's a racket. And you know that sometimes, when you have a racket and a ball, that, it's going to take, it may be a full-on game. It's like a tennis game. Okay, you guys hit the ball over in my court. Now I'm going to hit the ball back over into your court. Now, the court hits the ball back into your court. And, sometimes it can go back and forth until the ball no longer gets tossed back into your court. And that's the other thing too. Like, if you're under color of law, you're not in a court. You're not in your own court, right? So this is why, when they come after you and take whatever, or accuse you and make all these, and you're basically negotiating, is because you're not standing in your own court. If you're common law, if you're trying to be an upstanding citizen, if you're trying to do no harm, and you're walking this path, you're in your court, right? Not only am I in my court, right, but the court is in their court, I'm in my court, and I'm also the trustee of my court. So I'm the attorney, right? I'm representing my court, which is the corporation, the entity that they've turned me into. So sometimes, you got to be really careful about getting in anger, because it can also get your mind into a place where you can't actually really look at the law, and you can't really put together good paperwork, because all you can think about is getting them back. And that can be a really bad place to actually stand your ground from, and to operate legally from, is to be in a place of anger or frustration or hatred, or, it's all, how dare you do this to me, or whatever else. You got to get out of that mindset, and you've got to get yourself grounded so that you can look at all the possibilities and be able to put your paperwork together, which is a specific puzzle, because at each time things change and they come at you, they bat the ball over into your court. The ball never lands in the same place. You never hit it in the same way. So you have to sometimes, work a puzzle, which is called your remedy, your instrument, even, a discovery. Each thing that you need to write a discovery for has to be specific. And if you're angry, if you're scared, or anything else, then you're not going to be able to get everything into the puzzle that you need in order to give them a clear picture of what you're expressing. And Bill, do you have anything to offer on that?
No, that's pretty good. I think we need to cover one more item here in the last 10 minutes. That's awesome. The Internal Revenue Service.
Yeah.
Like I said, that's what got me started in all this anyway, because I fought them for 18 years and finally won. It took that many years to find this information, but now it all seems so simple to me. Now, the Internal Revenue Service, first of all, I think they're crazy if you file, because who would want to sign your name to the word that they're going to penalize you for a penny mistake? That's pretty stupid. And on the other hand, there's no law that says you have to sign anything. My son, he decided to fill out his 1040. He did. He sent it in, but he refused to sign it because of the penalties quotation there. About 4 months later, they sent back the 1040 with a letter saying, well, we can't process this unless you sign it. So we threw it in the trash, and he's never been bothered since, because they can't proceed against you for that filing unless you signed a documentation stating that you want to be penalized. Now, there's three ways that the IRS can come after you. One is they can call an attorney near you and give him the option of trying to collect, let's say, $1,000 from you. Let's say the IRS will give him $200 for collecting it, and the agent also has the power to drop the fine down to maybe $500. Therefore, the IRS would get $300, and the agent would get $200. This is one way they can come after you, by hiring an outside assistant to do their work for you. The second way is through an administrative hearing. An administrative hearing is generally done through the mail with the Internal Revenue Service. And that particular administrative hearing is three parts. You'll get a letter in the mail stating, hey, we believe you owe this amount of money. Pay us. You got 30 days by law to answer that. If you don't answer, you are in dishonor. You don't want to go in dishonor, not even under the current law. Even if you're a common law man, you don't want to go into dishonor. You are required to answer those things. It's a hearing. You are required to do it. If you don't answer in 30 days, they're going to send you a second statement, and it'll say basically the same things, and it says, well, hell, during the last 30 days, you'd answer, so we're adding on another $100 penalty. If you don't answer that, they go to stage 3, which is the final phase of the administrative hearing, which is generally done through the mails, I'm trying to think of that mail, that certified mail. It'll come certified mail. Once you sign for that certified slip, you are now presumed guilty. You owe all that money. They now have the right to come to get your bank account, dock your wages, take your home, anything they need. That's an administrative hearing. It's done through the mail. Be sure you answer them in the proper way. The third way is that they can come after you through the courts, a judicial hearing. And that, if you try to go out again and hire an attorney for a federal crime like that, generally you have to put up a minimum of $250,000 just for them to deal with the Internal Revenue Service, because they don't like doing it. So those are the 3 different attacks that can come by the Internal Revenue Service. Now, no matter how these particular attacks come, you can beat it by using a simple little thing called a FOIA, F-O-I-A, Freedom of Information Act. A lot of these people out here, UFO buffs, they use FOIAs every day of the week trying to get information about UFOs. You can do that to the Internal Revenue Service very easily. So, if you're going to protect yourself in this FOIA, one of the things that you want to do, and I'm going to basically read this to you, is that you're going to take protection under the law until they answer the FOIA. They have 20 days by law to answer. And what you're going to ask for in a FOIA is a 1040. And the Internal Revenue Service cannot give you a 1040. They can't give you a 1040 easy form. They can't give you any forms that meet the requirements of the law. Consequently, they're breaking the law. So what we do is we capture them, and Congress has given us a way to do this. Congress actually wrote a law stating that you are not required to file unless all of their documents meet minimum federal requirements. One of the requirements that is met under this law is the word voluntary has to be on the front of all the 1040s and all the other forms that they use. If that word voluntary is not there, they have violated the law. They are in collusion. So what we do is we go ahead and send that FOIA in and ask for the 1040. And then also at the bottom of the page we say, I'm going to go ahead and read this. The law you're going to take protection under is called the PRA, or the Public Protection Act. Under the Paperwork Reduction Act, which is actually public protection. Okay, I'm reading it wrong. The Paperwork Reduction Act is a public protection act, okay? And it says, and notwithstanding any other provision of law, no person shall be subject to any penalty for failing to comply with a collection of information that is subject to this subchapter. It says the information of collection if it does not display a valid control number assigned by the director in accordance with the subchapter, then you don't have to fill out that paperwork. It also says that if the agency fails to inform you who is to respond to the collection of information, that such person is not required to respond to the collection of information unless it displays a valid control number. Now, that valid control number that they're talking about is that little number up in the right-hand corner, which is the OMB number, Office of Management and Budget. In order for the IRS to have a legal form, every 3 years they have to send their forms in for approval. And what's been going on is that the Office of Management and Budget has approved all these forms even though they don't meet the requirements of the Act. That is collusion. That's where collusion is defined when 2 or more people come against you to defraud you. Now, these 2 persons that came together decided not to put the word voluntary on it because no one would fill out the forms and they would lose their money. That's not very good. However, the other thing you need to know is that back in 1939, under House resolution, is that Congress repealed all the internal revenue laws. There are no laws. The private club called We the People has a $1 million reward out for anyone who can find the law. No one's ever been able to find it. That's because it doesn't exist and hasn't existed since 1939. It's all done by fraud. Again, it's voluntary. And they've stated that through an act of Congress. So if you're getting trouble with the Internal Revenue Service, just look up the Paperwork Reduction Act under Google. It's a very short act. It's easy to read, and anyone can understand. In fact, it's one of the best acts that has ever been written. It's just very, very easy to read. But even if they pull you into a court, let's just say you really did something bad, like they tried to do to me. I'm the manager of 4 LLCs, and I've been moving money around all over, 80,000 here, 100,000 there. Next thing I knew, I had 2 treasury agents coming to my home, asking me all kinds of questions, to which the majority of I answered, none of your business, none of your business, none of your business. Well, how much salary do you make? None of your business. Well, are you moving more money? None of your business. What are you doing? It's none of your business. See, all this is Fourth Amendment information they're asking for. You're not required to respond. What you do is you're taking your protection under the Fifth Amendment to not answer their questions and tell them to take a hike. So they left, they went out, and then they started pulling records, bank records, without permission from the manager of the corporations, which is me. They did it illegally. And then my brother-in-law called me back up and says, hey, they're checking into our accounts illegally. And that's when I wrote the FOIA. I wrote a FOIA. I sent it in to the IRS agents here, and I sent a copy off to the director. Next thing I knew, it was all over. They never bothered us again because they were trying to get us for both willful failure and money laundering. That's a lot of time in jail. So what we simply did is say, hey, we're taking protection under the Paperwork Reduction Act until you give us a legal form. You got 20 days. Bye.
Well,
it works every time. It's so cool. And it's a lot easier than the methods that Judge Anna uses. I've listened to her methods, and it's just too complicated. Yeah. It's just, and you got to be an attorney to understand what she writes. And it's so simple. You can write them simple. You don't even need a FOIA. Just get out, put your name on it, make a copy of what they sent to you, and say, I'm taking protection under the Paperwork Reduction Act until you put the word voluntary on all your forms. You can just say that, and they'll go away.
Yeah, so the freedom of, and for those that don't know, the FOIA is the Freedom of Information Act, and it forces them to produce the information that they have on you or that they're collecting on you, which they have to tell you if you ask. And so if they're doing it kind of without your permission, it is against their law, right? It's against their law that they're writing. And the other thing too is Bill helps people that have LLCs and trusts, and this is part of what he's done for a really long time. And so he manages these accounts, which is under their law, right? Their law says that you can be tax-free as a person if somebody else is managing your trust, right? So this is part of.
If anything, you can go out and start one of the largest corporations in the world and make billions of dollars, and that corporation is not required to file. Corporations aren't required to file. People aren't required to file. No one and no thing is required to file, period.
So under their law, by them trying to snoop around and trying to pull documents or go into banks and all this other stuff, they're going against their own law, which,
They're breaking they have no authority because in the 1992 Supreme Court hearing, the Farmers Union versus the United States, it came out clear in that lawsuit that The Internal Revenue Service is in Puerto Rico. It's not in the United States. It's an offshore merchant account run by attorneys, devils, communists.
And the Queen.
And filtrate all of the American people from an overseas base.
Right, from the Queen. The Queen is actually the person who runs it, who gets the money of England, not anybody, that corporation. So, all right, well, thanks, Bill. Hey, I really appreciate you being on the show. I hope that you'll think about maybe coming back on in a couple months and talking to people. I think people are really starting to wake up and they're looking for information. And, one of the things that I think can be a little bit frustrating is some of these people that are out there talking about different common law and different remedies, it's way over people's heads. So thanks for bringing it down to the public. And have a great day, Bill, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat masses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. The shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution